Hi, welcome to our weekly Section 8 report hangout. This is David Layfield with Affordable Housing Online. Happy New Year. It's actually an exciting start for the new year for anyone that's looking to apply for housing assistance. We're tracking more new waiting lists than we ever have before. Right now, we know of 119 waiting lists that are open across the country or getting ready to open in the next 30 days or so. And today I wanted to cover a few of those openings, highlight a big one that's open right now, which is Atlanta, show you what the online application looks like there. And then we've also got some user questions that were submitted, and I'll try to answer a few of those. If I don't get to your question in the Google Hangout, we'll go ahead and answer those in the comments to this event. And if you have more questions, go ahead and add those to the comment stream underneath the video here, and we'll get to those for you. All right, so let's get started. Opening soon. Spokane, Washington is opening later this month on January 26th. It's online only, and once the application period closes, they'll choose 600 applicants by random lottery to be added to the waiting list. Boulder, Colorado is opening on February 11th. It'll be open for 3 days. It's online only as well. It, again, is a random lottery. And in that case, we know there's a local preference for anyone that lives or works in Boulder. DeLand, Florida. It opens on the 16th of this month. It's open for 3 days or until they reach 1,000 pre-applications. So I'm assuming if they get 1,000 applications on the first day, it'll close. It's online only. And DeLand's about 30 minutes from both Daytona and Orlando, so we would expect there to be quite a bit of activity there, and most likely it's going to close before that 3 days is up. And this and several other Florida waiting lists are available on our Section 8 waiting list page. There's several other smaller Florida waiting lists that are opening soon, and you can always check out those on our Section 8 waiting list page. All 119 are there. Salt Lake City, Utah, that is opening on the 8th, which is tomorrow. It's an online application. They haven't announced a closing date for that yet. We'll try and figure out what that is and post that on our Salt Lake page. But if you need any information on the Salt Lake program with official links to the application, you can find all that info on our Salt Lake City pages on Affordable Housing Online. All right, so Atlanta opened yesterday, and it is open until the 13th of January, until 5 p.m. We've covered Atlanta quite a bit. We try to cover all the major openings, and we've been in frequent conversations with the folks over at the Atlanta Housing Authority. It's an interesting program. It's a moving to work program, which is a HUD demonstration program using the Section 8 voucher program. It requires you to be working, to be a full-time student or a combination thereof, or elderly or disabled to qualify. And there are several nuances to that requirement, so you really should take a look and read some of the details. We've covered a lot of the details on our Atlanta page, and we also have a Google Plus post with a bunch of questions and answers there. You'll find that Google Plus post on our Atlanta page. If you have more questions about the Atlanta opening, we're happy to try and get some answers for you. Again, we have spoken to the Housing Authority on numerous occasions and gotten some user questions answered there. Just so you know, the Atlanta Housing Authority Section 8 application and program is available to anybody. You don't have to live in Atlanta to apply. There is no local preference, so if you live in Kansas or Arkansas or Washington State, you can apply to the Atlanta Housing Authority program. However, if you end up getting a voucher, you would have to move to Atlanta and live there for at least a year. When the application window closes in Atlanta, they'll choose 10,000 applicants by random lottery, and we're expecting there to be many thousands more applicants than they end up choosing, and they do that because they don't want to have a 50-year-long waiting period. It's not reasonable. So they want to limit the number of people they have waiting for that long. So they've chosen about 10,000. I mean, for example, recently in Chicago, back in October, there were 285,000 applications for their voucher program. There's no way that Chicago could serve that many people in 50 years, and it just wouldn't make sense, and it wouldn't be fair to applicants to put everyone on the waiting list. So the fairest way to go about doing it is using a random lottery to choose a certain number of people that they know they can serve. And we did a Google Hangout with Sean Adkins, an official with the Atlanta Housing Authority, a couple of weeks ago. It's about 25 minutes long, and I asked him many questions about the program, how it works, and you can find that video on our website. We've also got a transcript from that video, so if you don't want to watch the whole video, you can actually skim through the transcript, which is right under the video on our site. And we've also got lots of other resources on the Atlanta opening. We're throwing a few of those up on the screen now. But if you go to our Atlanta page, you're going to find links to all the official information that the Atlanta Housing Authority provides, and also, again, that Google Plus post that we got running, where we have all sorts of questions and answers happening there, and I'll try and keep up with all those technical questions. And if I don't have an immediate answer, I can send an email into the Housing Authority, and they're very good at getting back with me pretty quickly with those answers. Since it is kind of a different program with the work requirement, there are some nuances there that are different from what everyone might be used to. And so I talked about a link to the application, and I want to real quick, I want to show you what the application looks like. It's really a very easy form. It's only one page, so if you go to the Atlanta Housing Authority website and you click on the register button, it's going to bring up the one-page preliminary application. And again, this is an application not actually for the waiting list. It's a pre-application, which is basically an application to be randomly chosen for the waiting list. But as you see, it's a fairly simple form. You've got your name, birth date, contact information. I always remind people, when you're doing an application, make sure you have contact information there that isn't going to change. The less frequently your contact information changes, the more likely it is you're actually going to be on the waiting list when it's time for your name to come to the top. Because what happens with a lot of people, they end up getting a new phone, they get a new email address, they've moved, and their physical address is no longer valid. The Housing Authority tries to contact them, and they can't get a hold of them. Well, what's the Housing Authority going to do? There's no way for them to get a hold of you, so you get removed from the waiting list. Meanwhile, for years, you think you're on the waiting list and you're not. So this is one of the more important parts of the form, is to make sure that you've got your contact information correct there. On to some other household member information. You need to list everyone that's going to be in the household and give that basic information on relationship, children, date of birth, that good stuff. And then the other important part, and the information you're going to have when you sit down to do the application, is your income. So make sure you've got pay stubs, or you have a fairly good, accurate estimate of what your total income is. And make sure that you've got that for every single person that's going to be in the household. Even if, say, you have an 18-year-old kid who's living with you, who's going to college, and they have a part-time job, their income actually counts in the qualification process, and you need to make sure you're including them. So you, your spouse, children, mother-in-law, if she's part of the household and she has a part-time job, the same thing. You need to make sure that you're including all of that income. And then lastly, it's just a simple certification, basic e-signature style certification. It's a really quick form, easy to do. Doesn't take you very long at all if you have all the information ready to go. So that's the Atlanta application. And so I thought I can go ahead and jump into a couple of user questions. take a couple of minutes answering those. We get them a lot, and I try to answer as many as possible. If you've got any questions, go ahead and send them through either our Facebook page or Google+. But today we had a few on this event stream I wanted to highlight. A lot of folks ask about specific cities or states, and when's the waiting list opening up there. So for example, today we had some requests, when's Florida or Miami-Dade, Rhode Island, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada, New York. When are waiting lists going to open up in these cities and states? And that's a tough question to answer, specifically because we are always researching. We have a team of folks here at Affordable Housing Online. We're always researching when waiting lists are opening. We monitor social media. We have some proprietary web crawlers we use to crawl housing authority websites to see if anything has been announced. We take, we scour public notices and newspapers. So we're doing a lot of that work, trying to find those openings for you. And honestly, we believe we catch 9 out of 10 waiting list openings and publish them on our page. So there's likely very few waiting list openings that we're not aware of and that aren't on our page, which means the answer to your question, when are more waiting lists opening up in Florida? Well, if you go to our waiting list page, they're all right there, and it's more than likely that there aren't any Florida openings that are open right now or opening soon that we don't know about and that aren't on that page. The same thing with all the other states that have been requested. Now, that's not to say that a major city in Florida might actually be considering opening their list tomorrow. What happens most of the time, a housing authority doesn't give a huge amount of advance notice. We might see as much as a month or two advance notice, but that's actually quite a bit of notice. Sometimes it's only weeks, and even some small housing authorities we found public notices are 7 to 10 days before the waiting list opens. So it's really hard to predict, okay, when is the waiting list going to open in Detroit, Michigan? It's not hard to predict, or it's not easy to predict that, and we do the best we can. If you subscribe to our email alerts, we send out an email every week. We send it out on Wednesday around noon, a couple of hours before this Google Hangout, and we always have any of the big openings that you need to know about are included there. So, not an easy question to answer, but we do our best to make sure that you're aware of any openings as they come in. Second question is, I'm disabled and I've got 2 kids. Why haven't I been approved for Section 8 yet? So there are many housing authorities and Section 8 programs that have priorities for disabled people, but there's also many that don't. And it's up to each individual housing authority whether or not they establish a priority for disabled persons. On top of that, usually even when there's a priority for disabled people, there is a very large population of disabled people that are already on the waiting list. So just because you're disabled and there's a preference doesn't mean you're going to the top. It might be a waiting list of 5,000 people, and there's already 1,000 disabled folks that are at the top of that list, but you're going to be 1,001. Well, if they can't serve number 1,001 for 2 or 3 years, then you're still going to be waiting a while. You're waiting less time than the person who's number 9,000 or whatever, but you're still going to wait longer than you might hope for. So that's probably the reason why you haven't been approved yet, if you're applying in an area where there is a preference for disabled folks. And then if there's not, then you're in the mix with everyone else down toward the bottom. And then the last question I wanted to answer today was, how do you know your status after you've applied if you don't hear anything back? And the saying no news is good news probably doesn't apply here. Usually if you've been selected in the random lottery, they'll let you know. And if you haven't, sometimes they let you know and sometimes they don't. If you haven't received a letter, it's very likely that you were not selected. Now, the good thing is that with online applications these days, you should be able to log back in and actually check your status. You instead of having to call the housing authority or wait for that letter, you should be able to log in usually and check your status, which is a good thing. So that way, if several weeks have gone by since you applied and since the waiting list application period ended and you didn't get a notice, you might want to just log in and check. For example, I know in Indianapolis, they were open, I don't know, sometime like October-ish. We had a user last week that was trying to help their elderly father out who had applied, and he hadn't heard anything, and she didn't know how to find out, and we helped direct her to the Indianapolis application status page where she could log in and check on his behalf, and she did unfortunately found that he wasn't selected for the random lottery, but at least she was able to find out. So that's how you go about finding out if you haven't received an official letter of acceptance or an email or anything like that. So those are the few questions I wanted to try and answer today. If you have any other questions, post them down in the event stream. We'll get to them. You can also do it over on Facebook. We've got 60,000 or so Facebook fans. We get lots of questions all the time. So anyway, that's it for today. We'll try and do another one of these next week to highlight some of the openings that we'll see between now and then. And I hope you have a great day and good luck with any of these applications you do. Thank you.